I think Ghost Rider is likely to be remembered as a franchise of extremes. The first film was so worried about being too dark and alienating audiences because of a strange premise, a guy with a flaming skull for a head, that it ended up silly and also very, very typical superhero fare. So the sequel slash reboot slash other movie called Ghost Rider with the same actor but different almost everything else overcompensates. It answers those very criticisms by going too far the other way. Now it's darker and grittier and doesn't care very much about being kid-friendly, but it's also not very much fun. I found it about as unmemorable as that first film, even while it's trying so very hard to be something different. The one thing they both have in common that shoots them both in the foot are uninspired and predictable stories. The first movie is a very average superhero story, and this one is a very average action thriller. I think the professional critics are making it out to be far worse than it is. A lot of reviews I read before seeing it made it sound as if it were offensive to all the senses, and it was all they could do to keep from getting up from their seats. I didn't have that experience, and I understand why some fans have called foul on those critics because they got a lot of things with this one that they were wanting. A more tortured Johnny Blaze, a scarier Ghost Rider, villains who aren't as easy to kill as stepping on ants, and most importantly, a film that doesn't come off like it's making fun of the material. My biggest complaint is that it's taking itself so seriously that the few times it does try to lighten things up, the jokes fall flat and feel really forced. I don't know if it's just impossible to balance dark and brooding and entertaining with this material, or if the right people just haven't been found to do it with Ghost Rider yet. But what you need here is a film that knows its premise is out there and allows itself to be very unrealistic, while its characters play it straight and have no idea they're in the land of the ridiculous. That's how you suspend an audience's disbelief. So far, I don't think that's really happened with Ghost Rider. The plot is pretty routine, though less contrived and better thought out than in the original. Johnny Blaze is given the chance to lose the Ghost Rider forever, which in this version he can't easily control, and he's tormented by its tendency to kill whoever gets in its way because every person has committed some sort of sin. A man who works with a group of holy monks asks Johnny to rescue a kid the devil is after, and without giving away the details, the devil has big plans for this kid. Johnny isn't in the business of helping people, or that's what he says anyway, but he tries in the hopes that these monks can exorcise his demon for him. The story about the special kid everyone's after, just like a magical artifact or a holy grail, is a stock plot that's probably been in at least a couple hundred movies, and it's not inherently a bad story, but the movie has to put a new spin on it without it coming off as uninspired, and unfortunately, there's not a lot else carrying the movie. I was reminded a little bit of Elektra. Everyone's pretty lifeless on screen. Nicolas Cage is definitely playing a different Johnny Blaze, but I don't know if he's really a better one. With the first film, he was worried about Blaze coming off as too stereotypical, and here, he is too stereotypical. That's not because he's not listening to the Carpenters and eating jelly beans. That stuff didn't automatically make the other version a better character, but I think there should be a little attitude to go along with the brooding and atoning, like Angel from Buffy and the Angel series had. The only time I feel like Blaze has a little character is, weirdly enough, during his occasional voiceovers, where he's giving the audience exposition about his deal with the devil and such. There's a little bit of comical cynicism and sarcasm in his voice, and I wish more of that could have been built into his overall performance. He is made more sympathetic than before by having a real mistake he's atoning for, and in this version, he outright admits to making his deal with the devil to save his father, not for his father's sake, but for selfish reasons, which makes much more sense than how it played in the previous movie and makes the stakes more personal and more relatable than simply, well, I guess I shouldn't have done that because I had no idea I was going to turn into this flaming skeleton guy and kill people. There's also a real attempt at explaining the mythos of the Ghost Rider, what the spirit is, how it works with Johnny, and where it came from. I don't think it's anything like thought out enough, and ultimately it leads to what I found to be a pretty callable and facepalm-inducing ending, but I did appreciate that some kind of background was there, and that the Ghost Rider and Johnny are separate entities. A little is done with Johnny trying to fight the Ghost Rider back, but I think that idea should have been taken much, much further. I also think if there was less emphasis on the kid and more emphasis on the Ghost Rider, the movie would have had the license to have more fun with it. The Ghost Rider has about as much screen time as it did in the first movie, and once again, when it's there, it looks awesome. And I think here it's quite a bit more awesome, and like I said, quite a bit scarier. But because the rest of the exchanges, fights, and chase scenes, of which there are plenty, are kind of stiff and routine, I want to see the Ghost Rider a whole lot more. Sometimes with such a larger-than-life character character, less is more, and it can be a great tactic to make your audience yearn to see that character because it's so much fun to watch, so you use it minimally as possible, like with the Joker in The Dark Knight or Red Skull in Captain America. But it only works if the rest of the movie is strong also, otherwise we're just yearning for that one cool thing because we're bored with the rest of it. I should also mention that I really question every time Ghost Rider uses the penance stare, because the rest of the time he just kills people by whacking his flaming chains at them, and it's a lot faster. There's at least one major plot point that comes directly out of him taking his time with the penance stare, and had he not used that, his life may have been a lot easier. I really don't care for the way most of the action is shot in this movie. The camera is always too close to his subject, so it's hard to tell what you're looking at. A little of that can be effective to get the audience into the scene, but it's gotta be mixed with more traditional wide shots, and not nothing but bouncy close-ups, or I'm both lost and nauseated. The story makes more sense and is better constructed than the first, though still pretty typical, and I like that there's a mythos and more of a set of rules built here, but I found every character to be dry and uninteresting. Johnny Blaze, the special kid, the devil, the kid's mother, everybody but the guy working with the monks who has a fun obsession with wine and guns. It's not unwatchable, and I like some of its choices over the first, but at the end of the day, it has the same basic problem. It's just not very memorable, and certainly not something I could get excited about watching again. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 4.